Okay, sorry about that. We had a false start with reception there. Now, welcome to the Harbour Foreshore here in Sydney, and it's the launch of International Compost Awareness Week. So why am I on the foreshore of the harbour, and what does a garden bed, a green waste bin, a drone and a sports field have to do with the launch of Compost Awareness Week? Well, prepare yourself for some really interesting developments. Compost Awareness Week is all about getting people up and engaged and committed to composting because they can start to see where they fit in. And this garden bed that you see here is the reason that we're launching Compost Awareness Week by the harbour. This garden bed is actually built on a bed of compost, and it's a rain garden, and a rain garden catches all stormwater runoff. So in this case, you can see that all the water from the car park runs from the asphalt area, and there's no curb here. This curb is open and the water can run into this garden bed. It then filters through a compost layer which takes out all of the hydrocarbons, all of the oil that comes from the back of the vehicles out of here, and it takes them, and then these plants take up all of that pollution so that it then doesn't end up in the harbour. Where does the green bin fit in? Well, the green bin is yours and my opportunity to contribute to this filtration of all our waterways. In this case, it's the harbour. Where you live, it could be a local lake or a river or a creek or a stream. So this good old-fashioned green bin collects green waste, which is then turned into the compost, which is then the filter to protect our waterways. It's a really wonderful opportunity for everyone to engage from their kitchen scraps, their little kitchen bin here, right through to the bigger, get down and dirty. Papa Dear Priest, what a great idea. Yeah, thanks Matthew. So it's this opportunity for you and your waste to contribute to the protection of all of our waterways. Now, with me for the start of Compost Awareness Week are the two brainchilds behind CORE. We've got Eric Love and Chris Rochfort. And Chris and Eric have been involved with CORE now so CORE is the Centre for Organic Research and Education. And Chris and Eric have been involved in doing this for how long?
20 years in CORE.
20 years. These are two passionate composters. Have a look at these composters. Now, a lot of people, I remember when they first asked me to come along and be involved with CORE, and it was International Compost Awareness Week, people had no idea. They just really didn't understand it. But that awareness is growing. Their research is going through the roof. And today we're here at this project, and it's a wonderful opportunity to spread the good word about compost. So guys, can you start by telling me a little bit about this project and what's happening in compost as a filtration medium?
Well, I might start with that, Costa. I think this particular project has been here since 2012. It's a 4-year-old garden, and it's one of the very first that used formulations including compost. There seems to be a trend to use sandy loam soils and sand, but they're not particularly good at growing media. So we've researched the particular formulations that can remove hydrocarbons, metals, nutrients, bacteria, and also gross pollutants. So we've got cleaner water going into the harbour.
Now, all of this compost itself is just coming from the street side collection?
Well, look, there's a range of different organic materials. They're all recycled and they're coming from different sources.
Oh, hang on. A bit hard to hear. Hang on. Yeah. How's that going?
There's a range of different organic materials, and I prefer to call that all carbon. There's different types of carbon materials. Now, quite a lot of the material does come from the green bin on the curbside, which is specially processed and put into formulations with other recycled materials, some more stable carbons and different carbons, and some aggregates as well, to come up with a formulation that's basically tailored for the type of contaminant that's going into the waterways. As you notice here, there's a lot of boats.
Yeah.
So look, it's pretty high in total petroleum hydrocarbons, this one. So the main objectives here was to remove the hydrocarbons.
Now, Eric, the other interesting thing is that by using sand filters, we're actually digging up other areas of the country to try and solve a problem in localities far from where that sand is coming from. So we're robbing Peter to feed Paul, so to speak.
Exactly. Well, look, it's a major dichotomy in the system, and I'm sure the people trying to put in rain gardens have the right sort of motives in mind, but then they go to naturally excavated soil deposits, which of course can't be replaced. We've already depleted a complete stock of natural soils on the North Shore up at Belrose. That's a complete deposit now gone for an environmental purpose. And my view is we should always be choosing the most sustainable option. And in this case, majority of the product is made from recycled material, recycled aggregates, recycled organics.
And I mean, the recycled organics is being produced week in, week out, and each and every one of us can contribute to that.
That's right,
detail
yeah.
that we can actually supply. Now, Chris, tell us what your position is on how these projects are going nationally and internationally. What's happening with them?
Well,
I'm just going to spin around.
It's been slow because there's a lot of traditional applications of, as Eric said, the finite resources and that. It's very hard for people to change. So our role is to try and show the research, show the technical detail on how we go about building rain gardens and that using recycled materials. For instance, the research that we've done over the last 15 years in this particular area, we've now got it to a stage where we have a computer design system that designs the filters and optimises the componentry and those various types of recycled organic materials Eric was talking about to be able to optimise the treatment. So in this case, you've got a lot of hydrocarbons. So we have a filter that's tweaked a certain way to make sure that it targets hydrocarbons fairly efficiently. In some other applications, residential streets, it might be residential road runoff with nutrients from lawns and other things, and metals, and we may be able to tweak the filter a different way using the computer system, which is unique around the world. So we have had some interest around the world. In fact, most of our work in this area is internationally, not in Australia, because of the fact that it's seen overseas as being very innovative, very cutting edge, and very much sustainable. So most of our work in Singapore, Canada, US, and now we have strong interest from China, where they're building sponge cities on a daily basis nearly, and they're needing, and this material is a sponge in a sponge city.
Now we're talking a sponge in a sponge city. So we've got Dean Bryan has said, compost, compost, compost. It's all we need to do. Make and use good compost. Exactly, Dean. That's exactly what Chris and Eric are talking about. So this is a sponge.
Yes, that's correct.
This is basically, if you go into any natural forest system, there's a sponge and everything filters
the humus
through
layer
that
is a sponge.
And here we are in a huge international capital city, and we've got this technology developing, and the technology actually begins right here at our green bins, so that whether it's leaves, whether it's weeds that you've pulled out of the garden, whether it's decomposing old timber offcuts, whether it's garden scraps and cuttings, all of these things are readily available and they're being collected. So what's your hopes for Compost Awareness Week?
Well, really it's increasing The paradigm about what you can use recycled organic materials for, and this is why this garden here is a perfect example of innovation, whereby you can use recycled organic materials for a totally different application than what the general public would think. We all know you can use it in your vegetable gardens and your lawns and other agricultural applications as well. But who would ever have thought that you could use what's in your garbage bin to actually clean toxins out of water that's going into Sydney Harbour? But it's taken 15 years of research or so to do that. It hasn't happened overnight. But now we're there using International Compost Awareness Week to get that message out about these innovative uses, and there's plenty more to come.
One of the things we do want to talk about as well is, the soil mechanisms, what actually makes compost work. And there's a range of these mechanisms that we've identified through research. That's how we're able to, tailor these products. Because you look at cation exchange, you're looking at, physical properties. There's a range of different soil mechanisms that actually contribute to treatment. We've talked long time in agriculture about nutrient retention and moisture retention. Well, these things are very important also in stormwater treatment, in cleaning up what's going into our waterways.
And we not only focus on even rain gardens, we're actually helping wrecking yards in California treat runoff out of old wrecked cars and all that, using the same science, the same computer system, and optimising the filters. In this case, it's in cartridges and socks, if you like, to capture the runoff off these wrecking yards where all the clunkers are, and stopping that pollution going in the water, and they're keeping these facilities underneath EPA thresholds in California and saving them money.
What Chris is talking about is, there's vegetated and non-vegetated applications where we can use this technology. And one of the most recent ones is a motor vehicle production house in Victoria that has a whole lot of runoff and trade waste and sweepings and washdowns that we're actually running through these filters in a device. And it's actually taking up to 90% of these toxic contaminants. We're talking super heavy metals, cadmium and magnesium and copper and lead and zinc and all sorts of ugly things out of that water, which is absolutely amazing. That it's another breadth to compost and the use of compost formulations. It's just an exciting new area.
And the other beauty of it is it's using natural processes. We don't plug this into a PowerPoint anywhere or anything like that. This is all nature really at work, and we've just created the environment for which nature can work most effectively in to actually clean up all the dirty work and do all the dirty work. So we've researched all the natural processes that go on in with compost that can target water, treating dirty waters, for instance, or runoff, and then using those natural forces and those natural mechanisms like filtration, like cation exchange, all the same things we talk about in horticulture and in why plants grow. We're actually turning that around to be able to be a benefit in treating pollutants that run into our waterways.
Barbara Mills has just said here, nice work. Is that lamandra in the garden? Refreshing to see natural processes. Yeah, there's all sorts of different native grasses here that have come from the local council nursery, which is another great layer, because you've got pigface over there, you've got dianella, you've got lamandra. There's all of these grasses have actually been grown from local seed. And as Dean Bryan has just said, just a 1% increase in organic matter allows the soil to hold an extra 82,000 litres of water per hectare.
That's correct.
So, Dean, as you say, like this process is scalable from a small laneway or a small alley right up to this large car park, harbourside, ferry wharf and car park. But then at the same time, the compost, the EPA, the New South Wales EPA is putting out a video this week, keep an eye out for it, where they're using compost on sports fields as well as using compost to control African lovegrass, because when you put the compost on, the African lovegrass doesn't love it anymore. And Colin Love, Eric Love, you know all about lovegrass. Kabam! Sorry, I'm laughing at my own jokes here. But
The other benefit is the fact that you're increasing the organic matter level in applications such as this rain garden here gives you the ability to grow a diverser range of plants. So while we've got lamandra as the person mentioned, and that's pretty common in rain gardens, we can now broaden that out and include a lot wider range of even native species to give a bit of diversity to these gardens to make them even more attractive.
Now, Terry Mitchell has asked what happens to the filtered out toxins.
Yep, good point. The research we've done, there's a number of aspects to it. In our computer design system, one of the things we actually design for is the lifespan of the filter. The fact that we increase the organic matter content gives a magnitude beyond imagination of surface area which can latch onto the pollutants such as the heavy metals. Secondly, because we're growing better plants and that in these systems, the plants can take up things like heavy metals. If you look at a bag of fertiliser, it's loaded with heavy metals, copper, zinc, you name it, are all in there. So plants can actually store some of these heavy metals as well, which means the system can last a lot longer than what it would normally last if you didn't have plants in it at all. In industrial applications, we have to change those filters out monthly or every 3 months. In these sort of applications with rain gardens, they're there for the asset life, and we design for the asset life of 20 and 30 years, because if you rolled out a gram of compost out onto a table, you've got hundreds of square metres of surface area. If you rolled a gram of sand out on a table, you've got no surface area virtually in which to attract and latch onto these metals and all the bugs that are in it to be able to break down toxic compounds like hydrocarbons.
It's interesting. It reminds me of a project. Where are the boys? We'll all stand in here this time. My hand's not long enough. That's the only problem.
You need a selfie stick.
Yeah, exactly. I was doing a project. I've been following a project down in Geelong called the Warralilly Wetlands Project, where they've built a series of. They turned an old sort of drainage ditch back into a series of wetlands, and they've got the gross pollutant traps, and then they've got different scales of water retention.
Yeah.
And it's brought the birds back, it's brought the ecology back and the biodiversity back into an area where they're going to build up to 70,000 houses. And within 3 years, there's more than 50 different bird varieties have come back as a result of the structures that they've built that are filtering the water and rehydrating what would otherwise be a dead landscape.
What you're talking about there is actually a treatment train approach, and part of our philosophy and one of the things we want to create awareness was go back to the source. The source of the pollutants is the place to treat them, not wait till they get to the end of the pipe when they're concentrated and almost nearly impossible to remove. And things like gardens here, this is right at the source of the pollutant. So those wetlands are really about treatment trains, and treatment trains we hope are going to become the best practice of the future.
And the other aspect with the biodiversity and the amenity side of things is it's been proven time and time again that if you have a good amenity, a lot of plants around, a lot of biodiversity around, clean water around, the asset value of your property in that is probably 10% higher than what it is if you're backing onto a factory or backing onto a street with no amenity applications like rain gardens and that. And there's research done on that to prove that. So people that have these sort of systems like rain gardens that in around their streets and all that, it can expect that their property values will be above what the average is for their area.
And I mean, beyond that, you're talking about like the ecological value adding, like sort of regenerating an ecosystem which is only just below the surface. We tend to forget that this car park and this road and this sports field, it's sitting on an ecology like the ridges behind us. The water is coming down through here. It hasn't changed. We've just stuck this thin veneer over the top of it.
Impervious surfaces, a lot of them too.
And the impervious surface just accelerates the water, whereas when we go for a structure like this, you know that it's slowing it down. The slower it is, it reduces peak flows, which means less erosion, which means less soil going in on the grass beds. And if the grass beds are in the harbour, then that means that the fish can reproduce.
That's right.
You'll get oysters regrowing and filtering the water again,
exactly.
because there's not these toxins.
Positive chain reaction.
It's an incredibly positive chain reaction, isn't it?
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it is about, look, it's about managing change, and you know, in the past it was all about how quickly you can get the water away into the waterways, but now, you know, what we're trying to do, that's what the sponge city concept of China is all about. It's about slowing that down, retaining the water, and of course one of the great benefits of compost is it does retain, and there were some statistics that one of your viewers there brought up earlier, and we calculate those things out in terms of the mixtures that we put together to see how long it will retain the water before it actually lets it go, and that slows it all down. It slows down the nuisance flooding. There's a whole lot of benefits to that, but you've got to have the right materials. You can't just... China is a lot of clays, so obviously the clays aren't very permeable. That's why they have a lot of interest in what we're doing. They might add a bit of sand, but even that, the clay's dispersive, and the clay will end up in the waterway. So it really is a science. It's a scientific breakthrough, this one, in being able to use, you know, what everyday people are putting out in their green bin, and other, you know, natural components to be able to create. Our research design was really based on a rainforest. How does a rainforest actually work? And how all the mechanisms, everything that we do is based on natural principles. But we're able to take the best of those natural principles, because we've researched those and identified those principles. We're able to combine different materials to achieve a particular outcome, you know, based on that particular science.
Someone asked, sorry, I missed the name. So what do you do with the filters?
Once they're finished?
Yeah,
we re-engineer those back into landscape materials and all that. By adding other things to them, we can bring them back down under threshold limits, and re-engineer those back into other products. But our vision for that is actually to be able to mine the metals out of them, because the metals are the only things that stay in there, and we don't let them fill up to their toxic. So we will replace those filters before they get to any near a toxic sort of stage or anything like that, and we re-engineer those back into other products and that. But ultimately, we want to come up with a system, and our research will head in this area in the future, and that's actually mine the metals back out of the material and use the metals back in for responsible applications and responsible uses back in green chemical engineering applications, for instance.
Well, look, one of the great things about, you know, compost and the way it hangs on to those metals, while it hangs on to the metals, it doesn't let them go. So you can still use the benefits of those, and as Chris mentioned, in our research we've identified that even over the whole lifespan you don't end up with a toxic product, you end up with a usable product, which doesn't leach, it doesn't leach through, it's encapsulated in there and is able to be taken up, and even the levels, the concentrations are very low as well, and look, that's something we established in our research very early.
Fantastic. I mean, there's lots of questions coming through about the scalability, and someone saying, can I use this, on a very small scale as one person?
No, look, there's two ways that we look at it, and obviously when you've got water coming down with a loading of contaminants in it, there's a certain amount, and there's a quantity of that happens in a year. So if you have a small garden on every property, then you're probably going to manage that. But then you've got the centralised one, and look, our computer model actually works out what size filter do you need to capture the contaminants coming off that catchment. So it's all catchment oriented. If the catchment's a household, a small garden will do the job. If you've got a large catchment, then a large. So there's really the scalability is ultimate.
No limit.
We actually have it in little bags, little bags that big that we put on drain strainers that has actually worked. So you can go from little bags to
highway systems going along 500 metres of a highway.
And you mentioned sports field. We could actually we could turn this sports field into a reuse system by using this. So in other words, it rains.
All the water from the surrounding ridge comes to this huge filtration system, and then the water filters through there and then goes out to the river.
But it can also be captured, for reuse.
Oh, and reused to water the field.
One of the problems with sports fields, and years ago in the middle of the drought, the main problem was we had to close sports fields down because they weren't getting enough water. Now here's an opportunity to capture that. There's a number of technologies that are able to filter, store subsurface, and then reuse that water. Then look, if there's a bit of nutrient in it, it's a fit for purpose water. So if there's been a nutrient, it's fine. It just recycles the the nutrient.
Yeah, the grass takes it up, and
you don't need to use fertilisers
Yeah.
or as much, and you can have a lovely green sports field that also acts as a sponge, and also it can retain water and keep and make water available for reuse. So
and I mean, the more that water's held in it's standard understanding. I mean, the water's held in a catchment, the more it rehydrates it, the more it's rehydrated, the greater canopy you can grow,
and then
that creates a cooler environment microclimatically, and so then everyone's contributing to a better living environment, ecologically and physically. Less 4 horsepower boxes stuck on the sides of little housing units.
These are the messages we're trying to convey in Compost Week. But look, it's just a win-win, and it's a fantastic win for the community, for the economy, for the environment. It's sustainability personified. But we are having some difficulty getting traction because it is a change. Unlike all things, all changes, they take time, and people have got to get their heads around what we're talking about. But
and the other thing is that the more these systems can be adopted, the less cost there is to the community actually on their waste disposal, which is a lot higher cost than reusing the materials into applications such as the rain gardens. So the cost to councils and that comes down, and therefore their rates and the waste levies that are on the rates, if you like, are also pegged, at least, if not reducing, the more that these sort of systems can be adopted. Yeah.
So, look, at this point, I might just wrap it up by saying it's International Compost Awareness Week. We've just launched it here down by the harbour in Sydney. The guys, Chris and Eric, have just shared lots of positive information about where compost is going. It is the future. Microbes are the future for undoing the problems of 70, 80, 100 years of unbridled industrial development. And you can find out what projects are going on in Compost Awareness Week at the website, which is compostweek.com.au. So check that out. Look for any events that are going on in your area. There's plenty of facts and info up on the website there. And guys, any last comment for our viewers?
Well, I think we'd like the community to get behind this and urge their politicians and in local government and state government to sort of get behind these types of initiatives.
Yep. Now, 2 final questions here. We've got, what does the filter look like, and where can I get one?
It looks very much like a potting media, you might say, because it's organic. If you bought it isn't a potting media, but it looks like them. Because we've engineered it so that it's got better hydrology, and it's got to take up all these, treat all these metals and that. It's not readily available from a householder point of view yet, but certainly as there's more demand in that, there's more infrastructure goes in where that will be available for people. But people, if they visit the Compost Week website and put some inquiries there, we might be able to deal with it and point them in the right direction.
Fantastic. Well, no worries, Steve. I'll remain focused here. So yeah, from here at this rain garden, this is a wonderful development and a great place to kick off International Compost Awareness Week. So from here at the launch, thanks for joining in, and if you've got any questions, jump on their website, and we'll speak to you again real soon. Bye for now.